record so far at the club has just not given any cause for confidence. They did get a win in the Champions League, but it was in that second leg over Atletico Madrid, and they ultimately went out of the competition. He was only hired on February the 14th. That one win, as I said, in the Champions League, a draw. It was a better performance, wasn't it, in the Premier League last week against Liverpool, but 4 defeats in all competitions. He joined them in 16th, and now they've dropped down to 17th today. And as Tony rightly says there, Bob, choosing a candidate, I mean, there were talk of perhaps people who are linked to the club, the likes of Tim Sherwood, Chris Hughton, Ryan Mason, previous players who perhaps respected by the players and the club. But you're in a very, very small pond of candidates who would want to take a job for potentially 7 games and then get relegated.
There would need to be a real love for the club. So you've given some good names. Maybe Robbie Keane, there's another one. Has done a very good job at Forest. But if you come in the moment, there's a big risk. But you are willing, in some cases, to say it's worth it, that it's Tottenham. I believe in the club. And so you've got to find somebody who really would bleed for the club. And then hope that person's character, personality from day one brings something out of the players that we're not seeing right now.
There are some, Tony, mitigating factors. They have had a huge issue with injuries over the last couple of seasons. Yeah. We saw another injury today. I think it was Matthijs Tel who went down. Van der Ven also struggling with injuries. So we can use that as something of an excuse. We've chosen some of the players, the key players that they've got out at the moment, likes of Bissouma, Kulusevski, Kudus, Odobert. Madison's out. He has been for a while. Betancourt and Ben Davies too. Can we use this as a way to explain how bad they've been?
I suppose you can. And let's not forget, Richarlison was out for a while. Van de Ven was out for a while. Cuti Romero was out for a while. So you add him to this list. There's no doubt that you can make an argument for a lot of these guys being starters in this group. And any manager will tell you, right, you ripped sort of, the heart of your team, especially defensively, when Cuti Romero and Van de Ven were out at the same time. It makes a difference. But you're talking about Tottenham being at the bottom of the table. If they haven't built a roster that can compete to not be in the position, because let's face it, everybody has had injuries. There's not like there's a team that doesn't have injuries. Part of your responsibility at a club like this is to build a roster to sustain some of this, right? So does it affect it? No doubt about it, it affects it. Any manager, right, Bob, will tell you that these things affect you. But you got to be ready for these things.
And they got a warning last season. Remember last season they almost got relegated. So they maybe should have learnt their lesson. I think the other thing for me, Bob, and I wanted to get your perspective as a coach for a long time on this, is often you hear managers speaking about in this run-in when they're fighting relegation, the importance of home games, winning at home, make home a fortress. But their home form is appalling, arguably worse than their away form. So if you were a manager in this situation, what can you possibly try and cling to turn the players' mentality around?
It's all about challenging the players in the right way and getting a response. And I don't know if you've been part of this recent stretch, if you can still do it. That's what happens. Players lose confidence, and that's when usually sackings take place. It's also the start of the international window. So if you're going to make the change, now's the time. And then where do they go? It brings back some good memories of Postecoglou, honestly, because I really enjoyed watching Tottenham when he was there. And again, league results weren't great, but they were an exciting team to watch. And then, of course, with the run that they had in Europa League. So something that's going to excite the players, excite the fans, bring back some belief.
Because coming into the game against Forest, it looked like it was a 3-horse race really for that last relegation spot. But Forest, by winning that game and with West Ham losing against Aston Villa, it's kind of turned into a 2-horse race now between Spurs and West Ham. West Ham, as we said, currently in the bottom 3. If we look at the fixtures compared of those two teams, Spurs between now and the end of the season and West Ham between now and the end of the season, we'll start with Spurs here. So they've got Sunderland, Brighton, Wolves, Aston Villa, Leeds, Chelsea, and then Everton on the final day. How do you feel when you look at these fixtures, Tony?
Well, it's a Sunderland team that maybe has been a surprise, a Brighton team that's got a big win. Of course, Wolves is the one that, I mean, you have to think 3 points. Villa, although they've had their ups and downs, I mean, we're looking at them challenging for a Champions League spot. Leeds United sort of in this conversation as well, although have separated themselves by 3 points. Chelsea, our Chelsea, you don't know what you're going to get, but certainly a team that's in the top 5 or 6 in the table. And Everton with, again, another good. This is a tough schedule right now when you just break it down game by game.
And let's compare that, Bob, to West Ham, their remaining fixtures between now and the end of the season. Actually quite similar. Before we came into the studio, they do play some of the same teams. So they also play Wolves, then Palace, then Everton, Brentford, who could be fighting for a European spot still by that point. Then they go to the leaders Arsenal, Newcastle as well they've got after that, and then Leeds, who are in, at the moment, still relatively in that relegation picture towards the bottom. Quite a similar run of fixtures for them too.
Maybe a little more difficult for West Ham, but they have had a few results of late, and Nuno Espirito Santo seems to give a team some stability. So if I'm a fan there's a little more belief, and the run-in's not easy, but I think they can do it.
What does your gut tell you, Tony, about the manager's position? I think it's a correct point that Bob says. You've got the international break. It doesn't look like it's going in any other direction other than down under Igor Tudor. Hasn't seemed to find any kind of tune out of his team. If you were in the position at the hierarchy of Spurs, would you make the decision now at least to give that international break for the new manager to work with the players and then rebuild again after that?
Yeah, look, anyone who's listened to me over the last 15 years in this business, I'm the last guy to fire somebody. I just don't know, Bob, that it's sustainable right now with what's happening. And because of the timing, as we're talking about international window, this is generally when you see, now we're seeing it normally in the October and November windows, right? Not necessarily in the March window, right? But this is the time where at least the manager, you would give them the best opportunity maybe to get a couple of ideas out before you're playing your next match, right? Because of the international window. I don't know how you can sustain this. The idea of, and I'm not disrespecting Nottingham Forest or Leeds or anybody else, but the idea of Tottenham being in the championship next year is unfathomable to me, right? I grew up in an era where Tottenham was at one point considered the elite 6, right, in the league. We all did, right? We all lived in that era. And now to see them in this position is unthinkable right now. But they've deserved to be in this position based on the results, right? We are, 31 match days in. This doesn't lie after 31 days. It might lie after 2 or 3 or even 5 days, but after 31 match days, it doesn't lie.
Let's get your predictions, both of you. If you were to say right now as we stand and what we've seen against Nottingham Forest, if you were to choose between West Ham and Spurs, we're going to put Forest out of it. We're assuming they're going to survive after that victory. Who would you think is more likely to go down, Bob, and why?
Right now, I fear for Tottenham. I just think it's on a downward trend, and they need something to change the momentum. And that could be a change in manager, but it's also a result. A result at the right time can make all the difference.
Tony, would you agree?
Yeah, I'm with Bob here. I fear most for Sunderland just because the direction.
You mean Tottenham?
I'm sorry, Tottenham. Yeah, I apologize.
As a Newcastle fan, I hope that was the case.
Yeah,
but
no, I'm
looking
at the fixture list here for some of these teams. There's just no direction right now. There's nothing to make you believe that Tottenham's going to win games right now. Nothing. And that's why I think now is the time to make a change. And again, I'm not that one that fires managers. I just have never subscribed to that because I know personally how hard it is. Bob could tell you better than I when you go into these situations how hard it is to change things because in general you're taking over teams that haven't had success, right? No one, and not a lot of people get the Arne Slot treatment where you're picking up a really good roster. You're picking up teams that have not done well, right? And to make changes is really, really difficult. But it just hasn't happened under Igor Tudor.